Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast, where we interview the stories of entrepreneurs, CEOs, and founders in the SaaS space. My name is Luis. I'm the owner and founder of Fantôm Agency, a digital marketing agency specializing in scaling SaaS companies. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing Yonatan and Yam. Yonatan is from CliClap and Yam is from Zest. One thing I want to mention before they are able to introduce themselves is Yonatan is very kind enough to provide anyone that is listening with a 10% discount on their product. Just mention that you listen to the podcast on the sales call and they'll be able to provide that. And why don't you start us off, Yam, with a little bit more about Zest and a little bit more about you.
Right, cool. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Zest. A little bit about me. So I'm a little bit over 10 years in the industry already. I founded a web marketing agency 10 years ago, which grew to be a big operation. And in the past few years, I was a CMO in some big Israeli startup, where we raised $18 million and we grew to a staff to be almost 100 people. And in the past 2 years, I'm handling 100% of my time with Zest, with a co-founder, which is my CTO. His name is Idan Yanovich. It's a great collaboration between us, and we'll probably speak about it later on. That's a little bit about me, about Zest. So we have Zest, basically it's a user-fueled e-learning platform. So we created a cool technology that knows how to distill and match content throughout from the web, and to match each distilled content for end users. By that, we create a perfect micro-learning experience for, again, each end user. So we are actually fighting content overload and information overload and all those, bad words. Mm-hmm. Eventually, what we create is like a professional growth experience for each of our users. They don't need to look for content on the web. And technology itself uses community or crowdsourced wisdom, we can say. So the content that gets distilled in is actually being suggested by other users. And then we have machine learning, which learn the whole content, if it all added value or not. And eventually, if the machine don't know, it sends queries again to the community, ask them a few questions about the given content. And again, if the content is good, it's been distilled in, then we are matching the content for each and the user. We have 80,000 users all in all, 20,000 monthly active users, 13,000 weekly active users. We do have revenue channels. We'll speak about them later on. And I think that's about it as far as it relates to that. We'll just mention that currently we are targeting only the marketing vertical. So there is only marketing related content on the distillery or on the Zest stream. And I think that's about it all in all.
That's awesome. It sounds like a great product, and I've actually used it a little bit. I went in there and played around, and it seems like it's very robust as far as all the different things that you can do in there. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a sec. Why don't we get Yonatan to introduce yourself and CliClap as well?
Hey, first of all, thanks a lot for having me as well. I'm very excited to be here with you and Yam. A bit about myself. So I'm coming from a background in mostly technology and business, like how to connect business with technology to help business goals. For 16 years, I would say, last time I counted back. CliClap was founded 3 years ago with my partner, Ari Zaks. He's the CTO, I'm the CEO. And I think, it's a good opportunity to speak here with you and Yam, because we are all about content marketing and inbound, and that's also what CliClap is. So if Zest would be like, the place where people find the content, and, when you look at inbound strategy, companies try to share content to get traffic to the site. We come in where traffic comes into the site, and we help those people coming in get what they need by providing a tool that kind of predicts and applies what's the next best action for each of the visitors. So you could think about it like, Netflix for B2B, where, you come in and you want to see which movies you want to see. So we find you which content you want to see. But what's unique there is that we highly focus on driving to business goals. So kind of the machine learning that we have behind the stage uses the content, but it also learns when is the best timing to try and engage with the visitor and get them to convert. So one of our mantras is, marketing has changed a lot and we need to change it more to be more user experience, more friendly in the way we do it. Today, it's very harsh the way websites work, right? Pop-ups jumping all over, gated assets, really annoying. We're trying to change this game and to make it more visitor-friendly, user-friendly, and know what people are looking for and when is the right time to engage with them. So that's kind of what the product does.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's definitely, you touched on a couple of points that are very true, just as far as marketing and things like that, and people pretty much being, they're being not disrupted in a good way. So they're just being, I guess they're being interrupted, right? They're trying to do something online and then you see this pop-up come up, or you see something else come up on the website and things like that. And I think using AI technology to kind of understand exactly where that user is in the journey is extremely valuable to really helping them and the business owner to make the best decision. I'm not entirely sure again on how, the back end of everything looks like, but from my understanding so far, you use, certain interactions on the website and things like that to give the business owner an idea of when the best time to reach out and ask a question about a specific feature that they might be looking at, and things like that. So it's I can see that being a very powerful way to use technology and AI and things like that to and to bring more people closer to you inbound. So that's really cool. And now what is, obviously growing a business is extremely hard. And a lot of people don't realize this. And now being an entrepreneur is a very, it's something that everyone wants to do, but it's easier said than done. So what are some of the issues that each of you ran across when first starting off?
All right, I'll start. So I think that first probably issues, and I really try to go a little bit back in time, because the obvious answer will be to get your first users, right? To get your alpha testers, to get your beta testers, to see how you build, how you're trying to accomplish product market fit, especially in the early days. But in this perspective, I think we can go even a little bit more backwards and to trying to understand how we can create a solid or concrete kind of a vision, so it will be easier for you to deliver the message of your value proposition of what you intend to provide to your users. So then, how to acquire those alpha testers or beta testers and your first users. It should be more tactical, and we can speak about these tactics as well. But I think that the more unite and tight that you will come with your idea and vision, probably will be easier for you to then execute and undertake your strategy. For instance, when I'm mentoring a few startups, I'm asking them, first of all, even if they are not fundraising, if they don't have any kind of fundraising efforts, just to create a deck. You have this Guy Kawasaki 10 slides template and stuff like that. So it's something that it's not for investors, it's just for the team, first of all, to try and sharpen up the messages and value proposition, better understand the pain points of the targeted audience. So I would say, first of all, come tuned, come ready with all the things, with all the messages that you want to deliver and all the answers that probably you will be questioned by your users, /investors, whoever will come with any kind of friction with your product.
What about you, Yonatan?
So I think, looking back, when people decide to start their entrepreneurship kind of journey, they don't really realize what they're getting into. No, it's true, I started it late, some people started it earlier. We really don't know. We are hearing, 5% succeed or even less. It's a roller coaster and all that, but that doesn't scare, anyone at the early stage, and that's good, because otherwise maybe you wouldn't have started it from the first stage, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that when looking at this and when thinking on how to approach this, it's about the experience and about running fast forward as much as you can, and not like trying to get everything done perfectly. On the one hand, on the other hand, you need to be very precise with what you do and how you make decisions. And as long as you take the decisions and you go quick, that's kind of the way around it. I can tell you that we didn't do it in the beginning. We listened a lot, we learned, but kind of, I have great experience in other areas. I was never a CEO. I was never an entrepreneur before I started. And it's kind of learning a total new domain while you need to run very fast forward. And you need to be aware of it. And you need to understand that you know nothing. And you need to learn. And you need to push forward. And you need to get the advice. And on the other hand, take your own decisions and not too much rely on others. Because, again, it's your business. So that's kind of the thing that you need to be realizing. And as long as you are focused and you understand that that's the situation, that you don't know everything and that you're going a lot into the shade and the places that you're not familiar with and you're good with it, then more likely you will have chances for success. And lastly, don't be afraid. I heard, I think, on another podcast, and I truly agree with it, on another one of your podcasts. Pivoting is part of the game, learning how the market goes. In marketing specifically, it's a red ocean, so many products out there. I think today it's more than 7,000 logos out there dealing with something about marketing. The market is very dynamic. Technology is changing very fast, and you will probably be changing all the time. It's not like deep technology that you can stick for long. You need to adjust yourself to the market. So these are kind of, the basic tips. It might be very macro, but I think it's the way to start before you dive in.
Absolutely. And you touched on that, that was mentioned in the previous podcast, and it's just understanding that you're going to have to pivot fast. It's inevitable. Obviously things change very, very quickly, specifically in this industry, SaaS, marketing, just anything that's digital. Things happen left and right, literally every single day that you maybe are aware of, but you're probably not aware of. By the time you know that something's already happening, you're probably already behind. So it's very similar to the stock market, where once you get the signal, it's already too late to be making any sort of big change or move. So it's just really understanding where things are going and listening to what's going on around you to see what you're going to have to change, how you're going to have to pivot, and really understanding how you're going to find the solution, right? Essentially, that's what it's all about, is finding a solution to a specific issue or a need that someone is having somewhere. And hopefully more than just one person is having that problem. So you might have a problem, but if it's just specific to you, then you're not going to be doing much of an impact. But if you can pinpoint, a bigger issue that is affecting a lot of people and no one or not many are either taking action on it or actually identifying that problem, they're going to be very successful if you act on it. So that's something else that you also mentioned, is actually taking action. A lot of people, they have all these ideas. Oh, I thought of Uber before Uber happened. Yeah, but you didn't do anything about it. So it's just, understanding the opportunity, but actually having what it takes to go forward with it. So I kind of want to pivot here into talking a little bit more about market fit and how, each one of you found that.
I think that product market fit is a never-ending story, right? If it ends, it means that the market is ending and something is bad. But I think that because everything is involved, and you need to adapt. And then in some point, that's a tipping point. You need to lead. You need to lead the change after you have some, a good slice of your targeted audience is already educated about your solution. But I think that what works for us eventually, or maybe even to start with, is that because our product is so community-based, and it's what people call today network effect kind of product. So the users actually are integrated within the product itself. And quite early we understood that the product cannot evolve and we cannot get any sort of fit with the market if we will not integrate those users, not just with the solution itself, but also with the mindset and the growth process and our own roadmap. Because we need to have some sort of a high friction with those users, with those early users that we had. So from early stages, we built an MAB, which is a member advisory board. We started with a few members. Today we have high dozens of them. Some of them are CMOs, some of them are juniors, some of them are more in the sales vertical, some of them are hardcore marketing. some of them are product. And again, it's very, it's like a huge demographics of different professionals. And what we got, the insights that we got from those people, I think probably helped us to decrease product market fit by few months. Again, it's not that we are there as far as related to product market fit, but the fact that there are dozens of more professionals who actually use our product on a daily and weekly basis, and they are integrated and they are fully involved with the way that we create the roadmap, and if we are creating new landing pages. So they give us feedback about the unique value proposition and about the structure of the page. So you have your own users who are professionals, in their own kind, and of course for our targeted vertical, and they actually feedback you, and they create some sort of a really fast back and forth movement between the company and the product and them as users. And today we actually excelled it. Today we have a lot of micro tribes of people who help us test new things, and which we consulted with, so as related to business model, whether we need to improve our weekly digest newsletter, the individualized newsletter that we have, and so on and so forth. These people they're not helping just for getting the product market fit in a shorter span of time, but they also carry the message of Zest, in every other places. So it's in their workplace. It can be that they mention us in blogs and write about us in PR and huge publications. So there is a lot of added value for that. So the bottom line from my perspective is get all the automated, or most of the automated tools that you use, that everyone tell you use in automation and do things that scale. So I really against that. I think that if you use those kind of automation platforms right at the beginning, you're creating some sort of buffer between you and your users. And that's a little bit stupid because you really want to get as much good friction with your users, and to hear how they speak about your solution and what kind of keywords they use and all this and all that. So I think, get rid of most of the automation stuff that you have. Get your hands dirty, with feedback, and try to create those kind of advisory boards or just people who can feedback you. Mm-hmm. And I really think that it will help you to make the whole product market fit time shorter.
Yeah, that's actually very valuable information. And then I think you touched on the fact that it's building a community, right? And having all the people in pretty much the same spot and having them interact with each other and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's cool because you've almost created a sort of new social media platform, but it's driven, and it's not like LinkedIn or Facebook or really anything that I've seen before. But it's just purely content. And again, it's just based off of things that you want to learn, want to listen to, or watch and so on. But I think one of the big things that I've been noticing, and I think other people have noticed this too, and I'm sure you have, is that a lot of marketing is going towards a very community / group based ecosystem where you bring people together, right? And this is, it is very macro. Obviously, Facebook brought people together. Twitter brought people together, but it seems like it's more so in a very niche perspective where everyone is learning about the same thing together. Everyone is, understanding kind of like the same topics. And you mentioned that you had a lot of marketers, a lot of people in the SaaS industry. Essentially, they're all learning about the same thing. A lot of it is marketing, but I like the fact that you mentioned, trying to have good friction with your prospects, with just people overall. And a lot of the things that happen in the SaaS industry are automated. A lot of it is just, you do this, something gets triggered, this happens, and so on. And just, thinking of it the other way around makes a lot of sense too, because essentially people like to connect with people. They like relationships, and that's essentially what's most valuable. And I think where, the internet should really come in is connecting more people, not having robots do everything for them, essentially.
I think that, in this perspective, about this specific subject, is that at the early stage, you really need a lot of brain power. You can call it micro tribes, you can call it member advisory board, whatever. You just need more brains to help you, not just to grow, but to think about the whole solution and pain and proposition, thing that we discussed before. And you need to grow your way to think how you can have more brains that will help you to to think about your product, about the proposition, solution, strategy, tactics, game plan, and so on and so forth. So whatever works for each one of the watchers. So that's quite individual, but just think how we can have more brains to help you. Those are like micro mentors also in some sort of way.
And if you're collecting all this feedback, from people on the platform, on the software, is there some sort of incentive for them to give it to you? It's obviously it's something I think that a lot of companies struggle with. Everyone tells you get feedback, learn from your customers, listen to what they're saying. They have all the answers, but it's easier said than done. Again, you can't just throw some NPS survey and expect everyone to fill it out.
I can answer your question regarding Yam because I'm a savvy follower, and I can tell you that what's interesting about how they build their community as a member in the community is that it's all about transparency and value eventually. And when you're transparent and you provide authentic content and share everything, people kind of give back. And I think that's the core thing here. So that's how they're being operating, and that's how I see, whenever Yam is posting something, all the engagement, both myself and, many hundreds and thousands of other people are happy to give back what they're doing.
Essentially, being vulnerable is very, very, people don't like being vulnerable, and it seems like, what are people going to think of me and things like that, and people are always self-conscious about putting yourself out there in a specific way. But I think being vulnerable really brings light into how good you actually are as an individual, and the things that you're trying to change, and people like that. Again, it's just people, it's human to human, right, relationships. So being vulnerable and just putting it out there and actually engaging with people, which you actually touched on as well, is just removing the automated part from it. So essentially, that helps you. But I guess the question is, what do they get out of it?
I'll just in-depth in what Yonatan said. First of all, about being vulnerable, so that's totally cool. On the vulnerable spectrum, just remember that there is one side of it is very authentic. The other side of it is what we call struggle porn. So you have a lot of stuff on LinkedIn right now in the past few months. I think it's where it's starting to lose the authenticity already about what people get from it. So that's exactly, that's what works for us. And Yonatan mentioned it, is that once you give a lot, and we really gave a lot, and we're still giving as far as it relates to added value. So people are coming to the platform and they feel that they're not fighting noise anymore. There is good content they consume on a daily or hourly basis. They're getting improved in what they do. They don't need to scout for content anywhere place. And all the communication, whether it's the one-on-one communication or the automated communication or the social media communication that we have, is based on 3 pillars. We call it the VAT methodology. So it's vulnerable, most of it. It's vulnerable, authentic, and transparent. And we can speak about a lot of examples that we use and others use. So I think that once you give a lot of added value from one end and you are being human in the way that you communicate with the tribe or with your followers, so there is a big synergy that's being created because you're delivering authentic messages that it's really easy to engage with. And people just want to be part of what you do. Of course, you need to be super clear with your mission, vision, and also who you fight against.
Mm-hmm.
And again, your proposition and everything else. So you need to wrap everything up together, speak about those things, and again, give a lot of added value with your product.
Value, absolutely. And
if I may add to this, like if you look today at marketing, it's kind of lost its way, I think, in a way, okay? Content marketing was very successful at the beginning, and today everyone is doing it and doing it the same. And it's being kind of getting boring and saying more of the same. And it's very hard to do things differently. And people are looking, to real things, to the real people, to the real information that we can share. And that's kind of taking marketing back to the basics of where it was in the very early beginning of thinking about the customer and the value, and not just about our company and ourselves and how to get more traffic, but actually the traffic will come once you give them the value. And I think that's what's adding up content marketing today, and why people see value in Zest, and why people prefer one site versus the other, or one kind of content strategy versus the other on sites, because those that kind of figure out how to bring, and it may sound obvious, but it's not, how to bring true value is the way today to work out with all the noise out there. And it's getting harder and harder from every day, and people are trying to copy each other, and it's becoming again not authentic. So you need to be very, very creative here in how you do your marketing, understand your traffic, or your target audience, and then it will generate traffic.
Absolutely. And that's actually something I'm pretty sure I heard this in a podcast that I was listening to earlier today. And it's just about, what kind of value, what kind of content to put out. Obviously, I mean, you can go and literally just put out whatever piece of PDF you want as a download or whatever blog post, but how do you know that's going to actually carry any value to your end user, or who you want to be attracting more? And I think there's a lot of pieces that go into that, essentially understanding, what the person needs, what they're trying to accomplish, both on a personal and also on a business perspective. And I think tying both of those together, whether it's business and personal, the more you can tie those together, I think the more valuable the content piece or whatever it is that you put out there is going to become, just because you're hitting on two very important things for that specific individual. So maybe you can say, if you're talking about productivity or something like that, what can you do to be productive that's going to also give you more time to spend with your family, instead of just how to be productive in a business, standpoint. Obviously, work-life balance is extremely important for people. So I think talking about both would kind of hit on something that is more valuable to someone.
The truth is that it's very hard, and it's very, specific by industry and by company. Eventually, I always like to say that I'm guessing and measuring. So as long as you measure like qualitative measurements of the engagement and how people are reading it and engaging with the content, that's the first step to start with. But being more specific, like the thing is that I would say in most industries, everything has been said like in the generic way, right? What's different is how you do things in terms of sharing more about your data and benchmarks and stuff that keeps changing, tactics or strategies that, are very unique to what you're doing, that people can replicate in your domain. These are the kind of things that people are looking at, and they kind of change from time to time, and they're not like repeating themselves, in marketing specifically, like there's all those influencers like Neil Patel and others that have said everything already, that there is to be said in the marketing area. So how can you refresh? There's a lot of places to refresh, but you need to be very, very specific to what your audience is looking for and how to help them improve, and be very data driven. And I would say that's, at least in the marketing arena, what's working best.
Absolutely.
That's true. I think that also, by the way, if we speak about content type, for instance, not form. I'm not talking about ebooks, white papers, podcasts, and so on and so forth, but type of content. So think what's interesting other people. And I believe that if most of us, that's actually the strategy that we took at Zest. So we understood that our best content is authentic, of course, but how you create authentic content, you don't need to think about what is the next blog that you want to publish. Or what is the next social media post that you want to publish. Just we decided we were going to do some sort of, to use a documentary kind of aspects. So we understood that each day we are going through things that actually might interest a lot of people that going through the same way as we are. Whether it's our end users, whether it's our clients, whether it's our colleagues, whether it's other entrepreneurs, and even if entrepreneurs are not our targeted audience. Then I understood it from speaking with a few startups, and then I told them about the way that we, let's say, came up with the way that we went and strategized our pre-seed round. Then they said that, wow, the whole story is interesting. And I don't think we invented something new, we just did it with a few other techniques. And we understood that each day we're actually experiencing something that is super interesting for others. And that's where we started to tell our stories and mindset and thought processes and all that. whether on Medium publication that we own or on social media posts. And this content stick. It means that really those readers are really engaged with this content, and it's being shared and having a lot of exposure. Just today, I met someone that came for a meeting with me. He was 25 minutes late, but the conversation was great. Like in 20 minutes, we provided a lot of added value for each other. And I told him, you know what? Because we discussed about self-branding. You should post it. You should just post it on this great story on your own LinkedIn, how you struggled with traffic and how you were late for an important meeting in 25 minutes, and eventually you managed to pull it off and to get a lot of added value from that, and I got a lot of added value for that, and everyone was happy. That's a really micro moment that is really authentic. Everybody can engage with it, and it's quite interesting. So that's one 2 cents from my end.
Very cool. No, I totally agree with everything that you guys just said. And to kind of talk a little bit on a different item here is, what has been the biggest accomplishment, as far as starting your companies, and for each one of you, obviously, what's something that you're very, very proud of?
Yonatan, you want to go first?
Sure. So, I think eventually at our stage, it's a lot of small wins, but if I try to kind of think what the biggest one is the fact that we are still running and still running nicely for 3 years. I would say half of the time we were bootstrapping, very tough times in terms of financials. And then after we got the seed, things moved faster, but eventually it's a survival kind of stage between the point you started. People are saying after round B, you start feeling more safe. I don't know, I haven't been there yet, but the fact that we were able to pivot on time and to make the changes, and there were bad times that we came out of, being very confident in our way and in what we want to do. I think that's the main success. I can tell you that the exact moment was right after we finished an accelerator, and we understood that what we are doing is not going to get any kind of business model. We had like 2,000 users, free users, but they weren't the kind of customers we wanted, and we had to shift, and we had no money. But we came up with the idea, and we went all the way through it, and we actually found on that occasion the VC that funded us, and things got better there. So it's small wins that get you to where you are, and I think that's kind of the way I look at it. I try to find the small things that make me feel that things are moving in the right direction.
And you have to. I mean, there's so many moving things all the time, and there's always going to be setbacks. Whether we like it or not, they're always going to be there, and it's almost how you take them. It's just failing forward, learning from what happens, understanding that you either need something different or you have to switch something. Like you said, you had customers, but they weren't the kind of customers that you wanted. And I think that's very, very important with pretty much any sort of business that you have. It almost drags you down as an individual, because it doesn't fulfill you if you're not happy with what you're doing. So I think just understanding, is this the perfect customer? Is this who I really want to be working with? And it's obviously just all about being happy with what you're doing and feeling fulfilled. And if that's not what's going on with the company, I think then there's really no point to be doing it.
That's true. I think that Yonatan's pivot story is worth to get even another podcast, because it's super inspiring, and I think that many entrepreneurs are experiencing it, either sharing it publicly, as Yonatan is doing, although only a handful of them do that. And most of them are not doing it. And anyway, as entrepreneurs, most of us are getting into mini pivots, probably, each quarter. No, Yonatan, that you can choose either, right?
At least.
At least, right, yeah, just to be nice. And you can shift the whole ship, towards the end, right? And you don't know what will happen. So that's something that is really inspiring. I think that as far as it's concerned, to my the way that when I felt success or some sort of peak with Zest, is that it's not the growth and not the all brave stories and all that for about performance and activity and all that. I think that in the moment that I got, I think it was the first feedback, the first good feedback after a lot of months of work. That we got a lot of bad feedback. It was good feedback in a manner that we understood that we actually changing lives for our end users. And when we stick to that and we try to better understand or to crack open the formula of what happened to this specific user and then to try and duplicate the same experience to others, that's where it's like, it's like when the atom is being cracked, right? So you get a lot of heat and light, and we got really good and nice moments from that. I think that it's good for everyone, for every entrepreneur probably, to understand that or to get to this point that the solution is not just another tool for increase your professional knowledge or to share and convert better marketing content or whatever the platform or tool actually does. I think that you need to understand and to dig in a little bit deeper to know what you actually solve for your users. As far as we're concerned, we know that you are making their professional lives or professional knowledge to be in the perfect kind of experience-based graph of just becoming better professionals of what they do, and increase the noise that they have in their life. And I think that if any entrepreneur will get into this really bottom line of what they changed in their users' minds, what make them stick, but as human beings, not as utilities or as users. So it's a sweet point where you really want to hang in because, as Yonatan said, you have a lot of tough times when you ship this boat. There's rough waters. So when the water gets too white, you really want to hang tight in this sweet point or this warm point that you know that you're actually changing lives of others.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Those are both very good answers. And I actually wanted to mention the fact that, and you mentioned decreasing the noise on people's lives and things like that. And there was a point in time not too long ago where I went on Facebook and it's all these things that I honestly didn't care about, right? And it's just like all these silly things like memes and stuff like that. I'm trying to become a better individual on a both personal basis, business basis. I just want to learn things and actually put valuable information into my head that I can use for whatever it may be, just valuable stuff. And I just kept seeing all these silly things and stuff like that. And so I decided, to remove the noise. What I did was pretty much get rid of every single friend that I had on there that I didn't really care about anymore. And essentially, I guess I'm trying to say I wish I would have found Zest before that. No, it's true. It's just making someone's lives easier and just better, more valuable.
Yeah.
Honestly, if they're going to Zest, they're gonna find some sort of value on there because they're going there for a reason, and that reason is to learn something new. So I like that a lot. And with that, we touched on vulnerability a little bit too, and so I want you guys to be a little vulnerable on the podcast. So why don't you tell me something that you're not very good at yourself?
I don't think we have enough time for that, but I can I can select a few things that I know that I need to improve, and I'm doing my best, to get better. I'm kind of a freestyle person, and I think that as an SEO, I'm mixing marketing and business CEO. As a CEO, you can't be too much freestyle. You need to be like more organized and stuff like that. So that's definitely one of the things. There's so many things that you make mistakes over and over again. If you want to be very specific, I think that we thought that we had a good understanding of the problem at the very early stage. Before we pivoted, and we said like, hey, this is amazing, and we didn't look like too much into the spectrum of the competition at the beginning because we said no one did it before, and we actually didn't find it in the very early beginning by searching. And then once we met, I remember the point where it happened. We met Yam knows him, Roy Povarchik, and we were telling him he's a growth hacker. What we're doing? He said, "Hey, did you look at that company?" And I said, "No, I didn't find it." When it was exactly the same, and I felt that the world broke down. And then people starting to ask, there is like, it's good that you have competition and that you're not only the ones. And finally, we pivoted from that direction, but there were like afterwards like 15 or 20 products doing just the same very quickly. So, I think that the fact that I know that I don't know is my vulnerability, but the place where I know that I can improve, and I'm very like into things that understanding where I'm not understanding and finding the right people to get the feedback from to prevent mistakes.
Very cool. Yeah.
I think that my weakest point is that I'm the best micromanager in the world. It's driving me crazy, and I hate it. And my team know it. They helped me to, they did an intervention, and they're trying to help me to get out of this bad addiction of mine. And I think that it happened in the past as well a lot when I was either an advisor or when I was an in-house CMO for 5 years. So it happened over there as well. But when you have your own initiative and when you own some sort of, you have a lot of responsibilities, that's for sure, but you also own a lot of communication to your backers, right, to your investors and all that. So this is where, as far as it's concerned to me, it really tickled me in the right or in the wrong places, right? And then you get even more compulsive upon others. And I think that that's because, it's yours and you know how to write things and how to tell the story and how to, what's bad, how it's good to communicate with users, and you know everything. Or so you think. Eventually you see that, and I experience it in many other companies that I manage, is that when you bring people, you give them the responsibility. Of course, they will fuck up a little bit here and there, exactly like you did in the beginning. But once you give them the right ingredients to grow, they will do it far more better than you will ever do it. And that's clear. It's something that I'm practicing. I'm telling to you now in order to practice it, right? That's the thing. And I think that's one of my biggest weaknesses. And I think that I'm trying to work on it at the moment. It's part of my resolutions for next year. And I really hope that we'll meet next year, and they will see. I will tell you that I'm sober for a month.
That's great. No, I think it's important for not just people in the SaaS space or business or whatever, but I think it's important for everyone to at least understand what their weakness is. If they don't want to do anything about it, that's a different story. But if they know that it's there and they're actually working to overcoming whatever that may be, I think it's important. And I think it talks about it also talks to someone being a good leader. Essentially, it's just knowing what you fail at, and that's okay. We're human. We're not going to do everything perfectly. We're not going to be able to delegate as best as we want to. It's hard to do that, especially when you think back to it. And for example, for you, Yam, I think, like you said, it's your kind of thing. You created it, and as much as you can say that, obviously it's not always true. Everyone that is under you that you are overlooking, they've all helped to create the product that SaaS is today, or CliClap is today. So there's always, we like to think that it was us that did everything, and we've done every single thing that grew this thing. But it's not always the case. And no matter how you look at it, there's always many, many people involved, whether it's someone that supported you in the beginning and actually told you that you could do it. That's already someone helping you in the right direction. Maybe it's not direct, but it's there. So I think it's just being able to identify those types of things from as early on as possible is important. Just as a self-development kind of point of view.
Yes.
So, if there's one piece of advice that you guys would give to any SaaS founder out there, what would that be?
Yeah, you go first.
Only one. I'll try to
If they needed one, if this is the one thing you could tell anyone.
It would be too fluff, but make sure that you choose the right co-founders. I think that I did a great choice. That's for for early stages, and I think that again probably a little bit chewed, but make sure that you make the right hires and on the right time.
Does that mean that
What's that?
Does that mean that you believe that everyone should have a co-founder?
Of course not, because again, it's all about biologies, right? All of us are comprised of different kinds of biologies, so no mathematics and the right formula. I know that for me, it definitely was a necessity, although I didn't think like that at the beginning. Not because of my current co-founder, but because when I had the idea of Zest, I thought, yeah, I will do it by myself. And after a while, of course, I understood that I must have someone with me, not just professionally wise, but also for personal aspects and just to maintain each other. It's a lot of work and it's a necessity in this kind of initiative. And I think that just to know when to get the right people on board, because sometimes you can bring in someone who is too senior and you are not that right for that, or your product is not right for that. And sometimes you can be more, you can lean towards getting more juniors because you don't have a lot of money or stuff like that. But that can be super harmful for business, for the growth. So I think that, as far as it relates for my advice is just construct your team well and on the right timing. That's probably would be it.
Great. Yonatan?
I would say what I'm going to say is easier said than done, and I'm being specific on the SaaS area, and it's not for all the SaaS products, but basically we're being taught that the first thing we need to start thinking about is how to raise money. And I think that's the wrong approach. As long as you can do it, once you have investors and you have people in your board, it gets less to be your kind of decision. Again, it really depends how the investment goes and how many people in the board. But basically, as long as you own everything, 100% of your company, then you have the ability to make changes quicker and faster and in the way that you believe it. And more people coming in, the more complex it becomes. So try to get to the point where you raise money when you're ready to grow or when you really need it, because you will be losing a lot of learning opportunities that you won't have when when you have investors that have on one hand the same agenda as you, and on the other less time than you would like to have in some cases. So that's something to take into consideration and not run after the money too soon. I think that's something that I didn't know when we started. We always looked for, how can we, get it, but it took us longer than we wanted. And the fact was that it was better, because if we raised money with a previous product, we would have been closed by now.
Mm-hmm. And I think
if we had a VC inside.
Yeah, I think, kind of the big piggyback off of what you said is not thinking so much about the money at the beginning, but thinking about the product and the solution that it brings more than anything, right? If you can't find the right solution, then the money's not going to do anything, no matter how much you have it.
Well, it's hard to be like too broad, with this kind of comment or advice. But basically, if you think about it, like just like there's a product market fit, there is also, I would say, an investment fit, right? Investors don't jump in very early. In many cases, the angels do. Investors really depends. VCs depends what stage they invest in, but they want to see something happening. And even if you look, maybe Zest's case is more familiar because Yam has been sharing much more than I did in the early stages. And Yam, correct me if I'm wrong, at least from what I've been looking at, is that they really made it to a point where everyone in the industry kind of knew them. And then it was, again, the process of the fundraising was amazing by itself. I don't know if you saw it, but basically the process was in a place that they could start choosing kind of which VCs they want to stick with and not the other way around. And you always prefer to be in that position rather than running after anyone that will give you money. And you can only do that when you have a good position in where your product is. So try to get there at least before the first big round in a way that you could be as strong as possible.
Absolutely.
And not just for the sake of your stock, but also for, cutting the time it takes to get the investment and the effort and finding the right investor that can really bring value and the ability to choose. That's really hard.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. What are your thoughts on investments, Yam?
Again, it's not the one size fits all. I think it's really related to if you can bootstrap your company, probably I think it's a great way to do that. We were bootstrap for almost 1 year and a half, something like that, till we got to a critical mass of users. And then we started to do fundraising round. I think that, again, we saw it from our perspective of how we can acquire more brains to help us to undertake what we're going to undertake, because we understood after we had this critical mass of users, it's going to be a hell of a ride, you can say, because we knew that we need to have more people who already been there and done that, who led huge companies, who been through a few exits before, who've been through or who led a few IPOs before. And we knew that we were going to aim really, really high. And in order to do that, it's not just having advisors or stuff like that. We wanted someone that will really help us to carry the weight, or how we say, to push the boat up the mountain, right? It's a thing. You need people that will help you to push the boat. You cannot push it and then also drag someone you. So this is why we choose a little bit different kind of fundraising methodology, and we actually, in a certain amount of time, we were able to reverse the whole methodology, so they were after us. But I think it's not a short story how we did it, but we can continue sometime else. I think that's how it's not just the money that those people will bring in, because in many cases the money can hold you back or hold you down if you're not bringing in the right investor. It's really related to the team tip that I had before. So just know who you're bringing in, because you're bringing, you're bringing in partners. It's not bringing in employees or staff or team. So you really need to know who you're bringing in and what will be the added value to your own startup, of course. So it's all about the brains comes in.
That's great. That's great advice. And I've got a couple more questions for you guys. First, and I've never actually asked this question. I thought of it just a little bit ago, but what is one SaaS company that each of you looks up to? Not founder, but just companies.
I think it will be the usual. No, Yonatan, probably. I love Drift from obvious reasons, for different reasons. I love Intercom, and I think the best one that you can look up to is probably Slack. I love what the previous CMO did throughout the years, and the way that he constructed the company, and the way that he build the company or the organizational structure under him or with him, probably in this case, in a really unique manner. When I was a CMO, I learned a lot from what Slack's previous CMO did. In the past few weeks, we are we're in good contact with Slack themselves, with their team over there. We are creating some sort of unique integration, so you can see that the DNA over there is nothing but amazing. It's really amazing people, amazing stuff. They really superhuman, you can say, superhumanized, and you can really appreciate them, not just as a solution and great, the great things that they do as far as related to growth, and how they now rebranded a little bit or refreshed the branding and created a beautiful site, but also the team itself, the DNA, what those people possess, and of course, deliver as key proposition of their own company's DNA, which is amazing for me.
Very cool. Yonatan?
Yeah, first of all, I think the ones that Yam mentioned are also the ones that I really like. I would like to add also at a different scale, but they're very interesting and they helped me learn a lot in the beginning, is Buffer. I think that although they didn't become or didn't want to become a unicorn, their way that they did, build their company, the way they should, I don't know if people I work with, but for example, all their sales KPIs are open to the crowd through a BI tool that connects with the Stripe. So you can actually see how many people buy the product, churn, everything is transparent.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can see everything in real time. Their company is spread. There is no offices. Their CEO is, I think, from Hawaii, managing things, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's really the new world, what they brought in, and it was quite some time ago, they were really the visionaries there. So I really like the way that they did things. Although, again, they chose not to become a very big company. They're very happy in their niche and where they're going towards. Another one is MailChimp. I think they also, kind of build their way through and in a very interesting way. Mm-hmm. So these are the kind of the ones I looked at and what their strategies were. We changed our product to be something that's less of what they're doing in terms of their acquisition and their business kind of plan. But it was very interesting for me at the beginning to learn from those.
Very cool. Awesome. And two more questions. What is one book that you guys love?
For me, it's easy. I'm super dyslexic and I can't read. I think the last book that I read was when I was probably in, when I was 9, something like that. So that's easy for me. I mostly read tons of articles each week from the people who suggest content on Zest, but with books, I just cannot make it.
Yeah. So what is your favorite source of articles, if it's like a website?
It's I had to ask a mother which son she loved most, but because we have a lot of great resources.
Yeah.
And I think that the best answer from my end, as a moderator in part of the moderators of the tribe of Zest, it would be Medium.
Okay.
Just Medium as is, no specific publication over there. Mm-hmm. I have a weak point as far as it relates to Medium content. I love how people are getting and again, it's all about being authentic, because it really speaks to me. It's hard to find a lot of a ton of good content on Medium, but once you follow the right people, and then you can drill in a little bit deeper and you can find really amazing content gems over there, really in-depth kind of educative marketing knowledge, for instance, or for entrepreneurs or whatever you want, whatever your niche is or profession. Mm-hmm. And I just love it because it so varies from one to another. It's not like that you say you have the same tone of voice for a given publication, if it's this blog or another. It's very eclectic, and I love it as someone that is hard for him to read and consume content. So I love that it's so colorful and you have different kind of tone of voice and the angles of how to tell a story or article structures, different sorts of creative and so on and so forth. So it's really speaks to me.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Yonatan?
So I knew Yam was dyslexic. I don't know if he knows I am, and
really?
And that's kind of something we have in common. I don't read books. The funny story is that I'm more dyslexic in Hebrew than in English. So I write and read better in English than in Hebrew. That's a different story. So I'm unable to read more than a page at a time. I lose interest.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I don't read books, and I think when I read a book was like a kid's book when I was at first grade, something like that. In terms of content, one of the people I like reading their content is called Andy Christodina. I hope I am pronouncing correctly his surname. He has really good content in marketing mostly. And there are many, many others, obviously, which I, from the ones that are very known, and from time to time I find the specific blogs that I really like. I think, Zest is a great resource for me as well. And I search a lot because I think that things change. I try to find, not the ones that are necessarily the top influencers, because what they're saying is kind of, for me at least, is repetitive, very repetitive to what things are, and everyone are doing the same. So it's also not good to follow too much of what's been said out there by those influencers as a copy paste. It won't work. What they're saying, they already did 5 years ago. Yeah. And if you try it, it will never be successful as they did it. So you need to find the fresh new things, and that's the hard part. But if you search correctly and you find the right tools, then you get there.
Very cool. And one last question. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Wow.
I'll shoot. So you didn't mention what size of your agency you're running, but you decided to take the podcast as one of the things that you think will bring a lot of listeners and potentially customers, right? How did you make that decision? Because the podcast is a lot of investment. So, yeah. And has it been successfully? How do you measure it?
That's a great question. Essentially, as far as podcasts go and the decision that went into it, one of the SaaS founders I'm very, very close with, and one of the ones that I believe that I got engaged with very early on, his name is Jonathan Grzybowski, and he's the founder of Penji. And he kind of, I've obviously podcasts has been around for a while, and I've listened to them, but it never crossed my mind on how I could use a podcast for myself. And I had a very tough time, because I'm very passionate about SaaS companies and the ecosystem as a whole, and just the stories behind the companies. How do you even come up with these ideas? And I always wanted to learn more about that. And then he had his own podcast, different podcast. He interviews entrepreneurs too, but not necessarily in the SaaS space. He has a couple of others podcasts as well, but essentially I feel like one day something just clicked, and I couldn't really get in touch with any founders in the SaaS space. A lot of them, I'm sure you know this, but not a lot of them have an email on the website or anything like that. You can't get in touch with anyone. And I wanted to know, how can I bring some value to people? Get to know them on a personal level, understand a little bit more about what they do, how they came across their company, and how they're providing value to people as well. And then I thought, well, if I give them, a channel to kind of talk about themselves and put themselves out there, they're going to like that. So they'll be open to being on the podcast with me. And essentially that was really it. It was just an effective way to come in touch with more people like you guys. And as far as how successful it's been, I feel, I think there's a couple of different ways to value the success of the podcast. And essentially, I think the most valuable thing that I've gained from this so far is really learning. It's been far more, I guess, educating than I thought it would be. I've learned a ton of things in a very short period of time. I believe this is podcast episode 19 or 20. And I feel like within that time period, I've learned so many things to the point where I'm thinking of maybe even starting my own SaaS company. I have no idea what that would be. But I've thought about it now, it just, I don't know. It's just, that's sort of, I think that's the most valuable thing I've gained so far. I've also gotten a couple of clients off of it. People are starting to recognize me. I had one individual on Facebook reach out with a specific question, and then out of the blue, he asked me, "Are you the guy that's on the podcast that I've been seeing lately?" I was like, "Yeah, that's me." And that was pretty cool. It's kind of one of those things. I asked you earlier, what's one of the things that you feel very accomplished with? And you also mentioned, taking note of the small wins too. You know, not everything's going to be this astronomical win that you, I don't know, become the best company or anything like that. You have to make sure that you also take acknowledgement of everything that's happening that is going to lead up to something bigger. So
yeah, sorry for cutting in, but yeah, maybe you should have a separate section if you don't have already for podcasts on Zest. And, you know, people recommend podcasts and can listen to the best ones, right?
Just go ahead and choose the podcast stream over there. That's it. You got it.
Yeah, I saw it.
You see,
it's on there, right?
You're one step ahead. You're one step ahead. But yeah, I don't listen that much to podcasts because it's really time consuming. And I think that one of the challenges is knowing which podcast episode is good and which isn't. Like, not all are the same. So maybe that's, again, you know, I know you have the ranking and everything. So maybe that's the way to find the good stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that we also discussed about it, right, Luis? In the beginning, we said that the podcast or this specific format, unlike textual articles, for instance, you cannot skim through it and to understand if it's good for you or not. You really listen to it. You cannot jump or fast forward, right? So in a way, I understand why it's time consuming, Yonatan. I'm not a huge podcast listener as well. I think I listen probably one podcast each 2 weeks or something like that while I'm working. And I think that the way that you engage with it is very remind me of Zest. As far as you do the Chrome new tab extension, because you really must have it. And then eventually you get used to it and you probably want to continue use it or not. But for podcasts, it's the same. You really need, in order to understand if there is any kind of added value for you over there, to listen quite a lot. Then you're getting engaged. You know, it's all about the psychological kind of CRO element of what podcast is. So I understand why it's time consuming, and I know that for me it works, and when I'm on the way home, or on the way to work, you know, on the train or stuff like that, so it works a little bit better. But I don't really understand why podcasts are good and why they're a little bit less suitable for other people.
Yeah, it all depends what kind of content you like to consume and how you want to structure, you know, how you really take on any valuable information. I think obviously that's a whole different talk, but essentially I think that being that it's so specific, right? It's SaaS founders. I hope that I am bringing value to, you know, people like yourself and people that are listening too, whether it's someone that is just starting out their company and they hear specific things in the podcast that are going to help them make a better decision later down the road, and things like that. It's essentially all about bringing value to people. Obviously, I enjoy doing it, so it's not like, you know, it's not like I'm sitting here wanting to get off or anything like that. I enjoy talking to people like you guys. So it's bringing value to me.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm not saying, and by the way, don't get me wrong, I do listen to podcasts, but I don't have the way home because I drive a motorbike, so I can't listen to podcasts while I'm driving. And Yam goes by the train, so he might have a bit more opportunities when he's not working on the train. But I think that what's missing out there is like, and maybe that's something to invest in, is kind of summarizing, not just getting a text out there. Some use the speech to text and stuff like that, but like summarizing what's it about, what you found valuable, so people can skip in and read it and then decide if they want to invest or not. And also SEO wise, I think, you know, it's a better way than just having it out there in the, you know, all those podcast listening tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the reasons why this isn't being done is because it's conversational. But what I try to do whenever I start sharing it on social media is kind of getting some bullet points of what was talked about. Obviously, I don't want people to waste their time. So if they're not going to be interested in it, don't listen to it. But if you see that one of those bullet points could be valuable to you, then by any means, you know, listen to it and hopefully you enjoy it. So
exactly,
that's all I can do.
Exactly. And eventually some podcasts are good and some are boring, like Yam and myself. So, you know, putting things up front is a part of the transparency, right?
Definitely.
No.
It's a good one.
So I just wanted to thank you guys for being on here. It's been a pleasure. And it's been it's been a whole journey, just the whole podcast. And I really appreciate the two of you taking the time out of your nights. I know it's later for you guys. So thank you very much for being on here. For anyone that's watching, please subscribe if you like the content. If you got any sort of value from it, you can subscribe on pretty much YouTube, any other streaming platform as far as podcasts go, like Spotify, iTunes, and so on. And if you're a SaaS founder, entrepreneur, or a CEO, or just want to learn more about not podcasts, but SaaS companies, make sure you join the group, SaaS AdLab. Just look that up and you should be able to find it. Guys, where can people find you online?
So I think that my favorite social media network is probably LinkedIn. So you can just search for Yam Regev over there. But you can feel free to connect me wherever else on Facebook and Twitter. On email, it's yam@zest.is. If you want my phone number, I can give you my phone number as well.
for all the ladies out there, and don't quote me on that. Yeah, same here. I actually removed my Facebook app from my mobile 2 months ago.
Same
I
here.
decided it was a waste of time. I only open my Facebook twice a day at work, usually. So the only place to find me besides my email is on LinkedIn, and I'm there quite a lot. I think LinkedIn for B2B is starting to get to a better position in some cases, and more engagement and more relationships, true relationships, and less automation as much as I would hope it would be. So yeah, find me Yonatan Snir on LinkedIn or through CliClap on LinkedIn. Very easy.
Cool. And we'll post all those links on the description of the video and in the podcast as well. So again, you can find me guys on Instagram. That's really like one I use the most, as well as LinkedIn. Just look up camacho.ftm on Instagram and also Fantom.agency on Instagram. We're starting to be a little bit more active on Twitter, but it's a struggle. We're working on that. So that's one of the things we're working on. But yeah, thank you so much guys for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I challenge every single one of you to, and anyone that's listening, to go and take action on whatever it is that you want to accomplish in life. Life's short, so make the most of it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for the time.
Of course. Thank you.